Reflections from Torch Trust, focusing on Christian faith and sight loss.
Hello and a warm welcome to Reflections, the show from Torch Trust that talks about faith and disability in today's world. I'm your host, Marilyn Baker, and I'm very pleased to be with you for the next half an hour. This week is National Storytelling Week. I love a good story, don't you? And today we'll be hearing the rest of producer Linn Davies' interview with sound engineer and musician Peter Bosher. Last week we heard the life story of blind sound engineer and musician Peter Bosher. He also talked about Sound Without Sight, an exciting initiative for blind people in sound and music. If you missed that, you can listen to the Reflections podcast on all the podcast platforms, as well as on our website. But now, let's return to Linn and Peter where they left off.
So following on from where we left off, you're also part of the Elizabeth Eagle-bott Memorial Fund, and you're on the committee there. This is also a very exciting opportunity for musicians and performers. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is and maybe who that is for as well?
Sure. Elizabeth Eagle-bott was a memorable name. She was a lady who left a large legacy. So there's a fund that she left, and originally it was for blind organists. But there aren't very many blind organists. There are one or two, but there aren't that many. So the fund has been running for 25 years. This year we are running an event to celebrate that. And it's for anybody who needs funding for something that will help them advance their, not just career, but really, rather like what I was saying before about Sound Without Sight, it's for anyone who, it could be, for example, to pay for an instrument or to pay for lessons. Those are very common things that people ask for. So ask for singing lessons or guitar lessons or piano lessons, whatever. It could be to go towards an instrument. It could be towards making learning music more accessible or performing music more accessible. So it might be magnification for someone who needs to be able to read the score while they're performing.
And I understand you can apply as an individual or as a company or an organization.
That's right. So individual musicians can apply. There are two categories. So that one is for a blind person themselves to apply. The other is for an organization that supports blind musicians, and so Sound Without Sight has received funding from the fund over the last 3 years because it supports blind musicians very clearly.
You're also a performing musician. Is that something you've always been doing? Have you always played? And I have to say, as somebody who has performed with you, you play the flute beautifully.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I started learning flute at school, but I played more guitar and keyboard, and when I was in Paris I played with other musicians. I did some busking, which was great, really, really good fun and very lucrative. It's really surprising how much money you can make busking. And the group that I played with, we made a record which didn't go anywhere, but it was a great experience to actually make a record. So I've always played. I'm not a professional musician. I love the opportunity to play, but I'm not technically good enough or dedicated enough to be a professional musician. But I think I'm semi-professional. I love playing with the Innovation Orchestra. I recently played on an album which was created with my son's partner, who is a country singer, but more recently she's been doing more world music and ambient music, and she released an album before Christmas which I played on. So getting the opportunity to play whenever is something I love to do. But as I say, I don't see myself as a professional musician, and I always say sound engineer and musician, and sometimes occasional musician. But I do love to play when I can. Also, while I was at RNIB, I came across an organisation which was called the British Computer Association of Blind People, BCAB at the time, and that still exists. It's now called TAVIP, which stands for the Technology Association of Visually Impaired People. And although it started in 1969, it started as an organisation supporting people working in computing, it's widened out and now supports blind people using all sorts of technology. So whether it's the new smart glasses which you can ask to describe things for you, or whether it's how to use a spreadsheet, or whether it's getting your television program guide to talk, any of those kind of things are now within what TAVIP supports, as well as campaigning obviously for accessibility, for example touch screens at the point of payment, all those kind of issues are dealt with by TAVIP. And I was chair of TAVIP way back, and I've been back on the committee for the last 5 or 6 years, and TAVIP has, I'm very thankful that TAVIP has supported Sound Without Sight. So Sound Without Sight is not a charity in its own right, but TAVIP supports Sound Without Sight and does the administration of the funding of different projects and this kind of thing. So I'm if you need any kind of tech support and you don't yet know about TAVIP, then please do look at the website tavip.org.uk. That's tavip.org.uk, and consider you might find the discussion group, which means you can ask a question about any tech problems you might be having. There are monthly tech chat help calls, all sorts of things that might help with general technology queries.
Tamana korinama balafama. Tamana korinama balafama. Tamana korinama balafama. Tamana korinama balafama. Fie ke pretamuno, inyo ke pretamuno.
And that was Tamuno Korinama, a Nigerian praise song written, composed and sung by blind singer and friend of Torch, Victoria Orowari. Kevin Satizabal played the piano, and the song was produced by Peter Bosher, who also played the flute. Now, if you'd like to hear more stories, why not check out Torch's new podcast, Blind Faith, where blind and partially sighted people share their life stories and faith journeys. Here's a little teaser to whet your appetite.
Really, as a child, I had a very supportive environment, so I was never aware that I couldn't see. It was like, I can't. What problem is that? What's the fuss all about? I did what I wanted,
and then you entered the real world.
And then I entered the real world on my own, without those sort of someone to go to if you dropped your 2 reels of cotton on the floor and you got your black and your white mixed up and whatever. So what I quite struggled with that, and I got married when I was 19. One of the things I really wanted to do in my life was I really wanted to have a family. I was from a large family, and to me that was the most important thing, was to have a family, really, a home and a family. So and I just assumed, right, that if I was determined enough and worked hard enough and all the rest, and had get up and go, that it would all be, I could run with the pack, and I could run with everybody else and be as capable and as good as everybody else. And I actually found it quite hard, if I'm honest. And I didn't know why I was finding it hard. And you sort of begin to realise that just that little bit of a sighted assistance from time to time can make a world of difference.
If you are living with sight loss or support someone who is, then Torch is here for you. Get in touch at torchtrust.org.
And if you'd like to hear more of Emma's story, I'm excited to share that the first 2 episodes, one of which features Emma, is available now. You can listen wherever you normally get your podcasts, or by going to the radio and podcast section of the Torch website. Now, let's return to the final part of Linn's interview with Peter, where he talks about how his faith inspires how he works with music.
How has your faith inspired your work? And do you feel that it has played more of a role in the sound engineering side of your work, or the tech side, or the music side, or has it been an element that has inspired you through all of it?
I think it's inspired me through all of it in different ways, because faith has a profound impact on your whole life. So whether it's choices or whether it's how you live from day to day and what you choose to do in relation to solving problems, in relation to anything, whether it's sound engineering or music, I think it certainly has an influence. But in music, it's particularly clear, I think, because when you're playing, if you are fixated on your own performance and how you're doing and getting everything technically perfect, then that's a recipe for disaster. And the opposite of that is letting my feeling that something is flowing through me and finding that sweet spot where I'm not worrying about whether or not I fingered the F sharp correctly, but rather feeling something flowing through me. And I think that is one way of experiencing God's love. If I'm trusting that, okay, I've done the practice, I've done the preparation, I've learnt the things that I need to learn, but when I improvise, I never know what's going to happen exactly. And I really love improvising. That's when I feel the most at ease, and the most, sometimes there is beauty which comes, it's not me that's creating it, it's coming from somewhere else, and there is beauty. And if I think I try to apply that to other situations, not just playing music, but playing music is where it's clearest.
If someone is listening and they are a blind musician, or someone who would like to develop either within music or within sound of any kind, whether that be, for radio or for music recordings or whatever, what advice do you have for them?
My first piece of advice would be to go to Sound Without Sight, because you will find whatever it is that you're interested in, whatever area you want to explore, you will find people who can advise you. You can be in touch with people who can advise you, and you'll also find information about how to go about it. So that's the first port of call. I'd also say, if there's something you really want to do, whatever it might be, don't listen to people who say you can't or it's impossible. There are always solutions, so talk to people, look online, believe it's possible, have faith, and you'll find a way.
Now it's time for Thought for the Week, where Torch friend and client Jane Emerton is joining a Pilates class.
A chance remark from a friend began a new venture for me. My friend announced that she had been going to a Pilates class. My interest stirred as I'd been thinking about taking up a new activity. Further inquiries were made to ensure that as a visually impaired person I'd cope with the classes. Having received reassurance, I signed up in some trepidation. A week later, I was collected for the first session, clad in recommended garb of loose-fitting leggings and sports top. A mat and block, both made of foam, were purchased at the onset. How difficult could this be, I told myself. We began in gentle moves which exercised shoulders and arms. This is easy, I began to think, gaining confidence and relaxing. How wrong was I? The movements became more difficult, with postures involving balancing on one leg, which had me wobbling and grabbing for the nearest solid object. Before long, we were on our mats and contorting into positions which, although graceful, felt so unnatural. Just when I believed that I was in the correct alignment, the class teacher would appear, then would manipulate my already aching limbs into a further extended pose. The clock eventually registered that the hour was over. With a great sense of relief, I wearily picked myself up and managed to stand upright. Since then, I have almost mastered those balancing positions, and my muscles seem to have adjusted to the weekly demands made upon them, thankfully. Reflecting on my Pilates experience led me to look at my Christian life. I remembered times when I was complacent, believing that I was comfortable in my Christian faith. Like those moves in the class, there was always another place that God wanted me to reach. He wanted me out of my comfort zone, which Pilates also demanded of me. God tells us not to be afraid to go into unfamiliar situations or difficult places. He promises to be right there with us when the going gets tough. These Bible verses often help me when I feel afraid of doing something new. Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Philippians, chapter 4, verse 13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me.
I'm sorry to say that we're out of time for today, but we'll be back next week with more interviews and reflections. And of course there will be scintillating stories to come, and we look forward to those in the coming months. And don't forget, if you're blind or partially sighted and would like to learn more about any of the services provided by Torch, including ordering the NIV Braille Bible, our Torch Together holidays, our accessible books and resources, or our groups. Our client services team would be very happy to speak with you. The number to call for information and for song requests is 01858 438 260. That's 01858 438 260. Or you can email info@torchtrust.org. You can also find us on social media. Just search for Torch Trust on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. Well, we are out of time now, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reflections. So until next week, from me, Marilyn and everyone on the Reflections team, goodbye and God bless.
You've been listening to Reflections from Torch Trust.